Hi, my name is Michelle Pinkerton, and our group has decided to do our presentation on the virtual work environment. While some of you may not work in a virtual work environment, you do go to school in the virtual world, as you are all taking this class online. Could be somebody's first online experience, or it could be the only way that you choose to take your classes versus going into a traditional classroom setting. We will talk about advantages, disadvantages, even generation gaps, because as you all know, there are some people out there who do not embrace technology, which makes it very, very difficult if you're going to be in a virtual work environment when technology is what the virtual world is based on. So we do hope that you enjoy our presentation. You will hear from myself, who works in a virtual work environment. I still work at the office every single day, but my entire team is based in Kansas City. My entire training was done via phone, video conferencing, and WebEx meetings. It's been very interesting the last couple of months, just learning my new position and not having somebody to stand up and ask a question to or go down the aisle, but to have to actually pick up the phone or same time somebody and wait for somebody to get back to me. So it's been very interesting, challenging, but I've learned a lot. Carla also works in the same office, and you will hear from her as she does a lot of stuff virtually as well. So we hope that you enjoy our presentation. And before I give it all away, we will go into the presentation and talk more about the virtual work environment.
The virtual work environment. Our group members were myself, Michelle, Carla, and John. Let's get started. Virtual work environment. With the use of the internet, the work world has become virtual. Virtual meaning that a person can be sitting at home in bed, working on a finance report, or on the beach participating in the weekly conference call, or just down the hall from a group using WebEx meetings. All of these are some form of the virtual work that the 21st century has come to know. Many companies are working in a global market and can have many different cultures and environments to work. Online classes, like the one you are working on now, are also great examples of the virtual world. Many people have the opportunity to earn their degrees without ever stepping foot into a classroom. And as I stated in the opening, some of you, this may be your first online class. Others, you may prefer to do it this way all the time. It's just up to your preferences and what works into your schedule. And as many of you know, there are advantages to online classes. You can work it around your schedule. You too can do it from the comforts of your home. You can do it at work. You can even go into the library at school and work on your online class if that's where you choose to go. So it's all up to you and how you prefer to take your online classes. Email is probably the most common use of the virtual world. A communication can go across the site to across the world with videos, PowerPoints. The email can also provide the corporate IP address to a shared drive that can be accessed by all employees. There are a lot of programs out there that will allow virtual offices, somebody from Indiana to work with somebody in New York and India and California and maybe even Argentina. They can Skype. They can have programs on their computers where all of their information is stored so that if somebody is working on a document, it automatically saves it, that somebody else can get right back into that same document. They don't have to wait for somebody to send it to them via email. It can all just be right there for everybody to share, which makes it really convenient if somebody's out. You have access to the information just like you would if you were sitting in the office and can go to the file or to somebody's desk and pick up something. Generation gaps. There's a lot to discuss in generation gaps, and you may think, what do generations have to do with the virtual work environment? But the older generation does not trust the internet. They still want to write checks and put them in snail mail. And as you can see, the generation gaps in the workforce right now, are usually between 3, maximum 4 generations. In the near future, we are going to have over 5 generations working in the same workforce. The generation gaps that are in the workforce today are from the baby boomers to Generation C. Acceptance of technology is easier for Generation Y than the baby boomers who are still working today. The new generations use their smartphones to surf the internet, receive emails, and even handle conference calls, while the baby boomers will request, "Give me a stupid phone," and they do not want the new technology. Sometimes it is hard to get them to understand the lingo with technology between the new college grads and the baby boomers. The older generations like the personal interaction, while the younger generations prefer to work more independently using technology. One generation grew up with it, while the older generation has some people who don't even own a computer. And while it's hard for some of us to believe, that is the case. There are people who don't have internet access. They don't have access to email, nor do they want it. Are they missing out on a lot? Probably, but that's just their choice in the generation that they're from, and some of them just don't want to embrace it. So therefore, if they're still in the workforce and you're working in a virtual office, then it could be very difficult to get them to transform to that, or to get them, up to speed on internet and computers when they don't have one and they're not used to that. So there's a lot that goes between the generations that's hard sometimes in the virtual work environment. There are definitely advantages to the work environments. First and foremost is the financial savings to the virtual work environment. Having all of the information available for any employee here or across the world is key. Pitching a marketing idea from Texas to a Fortune 500 company in New York is only a few clicks away. Flexibility to employees is a great benefit to offer when looking for new talents. Allowing employees the flexibility to work around a child's doctor's appointment or a parent-teacher conference, or just work when they want, as long as the performance for the job is 100%. Some other advantages are there are not restrictions on geographical locations. Therefore, it opens up new opportunities for a more culturally diverse workforce. This can only add more great ideas to an ever-growing organization with new and different perspectives. Another major advantage is the ability to work globally, working 24/7 because the available information is shared across the virtual world. One world, not have to wait for Michelle in the United States to get into the office to see the new report she finished yesterday, but forgot to send. It's like we were just speaking of shared drives. There could be something that I'm working on, and it will be out there on the drive, and then somebody else could come into the office later that day or maybe first thing in the morning, and they could get right in there. They could see the changes that I've made. They could pick up right where I left off or right where they need to be, and they can start working right away. Imagine the cost of a flight, a hotel stay, and food for one employee, and compare it to spending money on a teleconference room. 10 to 15 years ago, a person would have to travel to interview for a new job, while today, they can have a Skype interview. Many people work a 40-hour work week, but they may do 12 hours today and 10 tomorrow, 12 the next, and 6 the next. They can work anytime and anywhere. There's a lot of advantages to the virtual world. It does take a great team and the right people to work in a virtual environment, but it can be done. And there are, like we said, if somebody could work from home, they can get right out of bed, start working, they can develop a routine, they can work from a beach chair if that's where they choose to, from their hotel. They can work anywhere. With anything, though, there are always disadvantages, and there are some disadvantages to the virtual work environment. Some of those disadvantages are the personal aspect of the face-to-face interaction. Not having this can sometimes lead to misunderstandings in communication. The cost of the new technology. To have the virtual work environment can be slightly higher. If this is the only way business is done, it is also recommended that a company use multiple technologies like instant messaging, web conferencing, and emails. Security of the customer's information as well as the company's information. Having the availability to all employees all over the world bring along serious security concerns. There are serious issues with hackers getting inside information about the company and its processes and procedures. I mean, think about how many times you see on the news that a bank information has been hacked into and the customer's information is jeopardized. Credit card companies, stores. I mean, if somebody gets inside, they can get all of that consumer information, so everybody's at risk. So it is very important for companies and for customers that security processes and procedures in place. And there's the personal aspect. It's one of the most important, especially for the older generations and sometimes just in general. Just like we were talking about the face-to-face interaction, and as I said in my introduction, it was challenging to do my training online or over the phone. I couldn't just roll out into the aisle or walk to another desk if I had a question. If I was monitoring a call and I wanted to double check on something, I had to same time somebody. I had to pick up the phone and call. Sometimes I would put in same time, can I call you? Because it was too much to put in the same time. Or maybe if they had a question, it wouldn't come out correctly when they asked me in the same time and it could be misunderstood. So, you had to have phone conversation. So, sometimes the face-to-face interaction is something that's a disadvantage. The cost of monitoring if information is compromised, both organizational and customer information, along with the bad press if customers' information was possibly stolen through the work of hackers. It's what we were just talking about, the security of customer information and all of the information that, we see on the news about companies being jeopardized. It does cost a lot for companies. And there, can be serious issues when hackers getting inside. So, like we said, it is very important for those security processes to be in place. Also, just keeping up with technology as it progresses can be costly. Technology is changing every day, and to continuously update that technology can be very expensive. Where we work, we had a virtual telepresence conference room. It was great, but I'm sure it was costly for them to be put in, as they put them in every single GE building. But they are great because I get to hold team meetings with my Kansas City team, and it's like I'm sitting right there in the same room with them. I can see them when they talk, the camera moves to them, and I can see them. So it is great. It's kind of like getting a face-to-face interaction, just where you can stay in the same different states. So, there are disadvantages, but, as we talk, there's advantages as well. Virtual teams. They take pieces of the business environment puzzle and they work together to complete a common goal, using all the resources and talents available. One thing that we had read, according to Nikki Pentelli and Robert Tuckler's article, The Power and Trust in Global Teams, a study found that in high-trust teams, power differentials do not disappear. Rather, power shifts from one member to another throughout the life cycle of the project, depending on the stage and the requirements. This would mean during each stage, the power is in the hands of a certain member and can't move forward until that person is finished with his or her part to shift the power to someone else. And that's going to take us into the four-dimensional model of a virtual team. On this slide here, you will see it demonstrates the four-dimensional model of the virtual team. This model represents that in virtual teams, people are linked through a common purpose over time. The success, failure, and challenges of any virtual team participate from the interaction among these four dimensions. Each of these 4 dimensions can be further analyzed in the light of 3 systems of input, processes, and results. This produces a total of 12 elements, which together define any virtual team. And we will, in this next slide here, the elements of the virtual team. And let us look at each of these dimensions within its 3 elements in greater details. The purpose. The purpose acts as a binding force for a virtual team. The commitment of the members to a shared common purpose guides them in their day-to-day tasks. A clear purpose transpires into more specific tasks, roles, and responsibilities of each member. Each member has both independent and interdependent sets of tasks. All of the tasks are delivered accurately. The team achieves its final output, which is measurable. Clear goals, independent and interdependent tasks, and measurable results guide the team to work towards desired direction. People. Virtual teams are more than just technology. It is about how members of the virtual team relate to both internal as well as external environments. Members of a virtual team have to work at 2 organizational levels. Internal, which involves working independently and working with other members of the same team. External, which involves working in a coordination with members of other teams, such as vendors, customers, etc. A productive virtual team depends on integration at both internal and external levels under shared leadership. Links. The virtual team members are linked through the multimedia tools such as emails, video conferencing, and instant messaging, etc. to continuously interact with each other. Such interactions reduce the boundaries between them, facilitate work processes, and aid decision making. Due to the absence of any physical interactions, the interactions supported by multimedia build workplace relationships, develop trust among the virtual team members, and form bonds necessary to perform efficiently and effectively. Trust is a critical success factor for any virtual team. Time. Virtual team does not give an opportunity to its leaders to call all the team members for a meeting at the same place and at the same time. It necessitates collaboration of effort to match each member's work calendar to schedule meetings and discussions for tracking projects. For each successful virtual team, it is important to set the ground rules for the formative stage itself. This leaves little room for any confusion and conflicts later during the performance stage. Thus, each virtual team has to pass through the stages of a team development lifecycle. In conclusion of the elements of a virtual team, thus we see how the 4-dimensional module of the virtual team, along with its 12 elements, form the general principles of virtual teams. The theoretical framework, which puts in practice, yields appreciative results. Most of the tools and techniques for managing virtual teams discussed in later articles are derived from this framework. And we got this information in regards to the elements and the 4-dimensional module of the virtual team from the Management Study Guide and the 4-dimensional module of virtual teams that you can find online. It's very informative, and once we go over all of this, I can definitely see in just my work environment how all these processes do take place and how I'm part of it. Just like in time and to collaborate meetings. Even though it's just an hour difference, I have to take into consideration when I'm setting up meetings the time difference. If somebody else has another meeting, I have to get into our Outlook system. I have to view their schedules. I have to set it all up. It's a lot different than just being able to look over and see if somebody's at their desk, if I can walk over and talk to them for a minute. So there's a lot that goes into the virtual work environment. Why virtual teams fail? No differential treatment to the dynamics of the virtual team. There's no training or orientation is important to either the leaders or the members. No acknowledgments of the greater complexity of virtual teams in the terms of time. The role and process. members lack the clarity of either their task roles or their rational roles or both. They do not know what specific activities they need to perform and what would be their outcome. Ineffective leadership. Leaders do not adapt or do not adopt new leadership tools when it comes to the virtual team. The leadership requires strong interpersonal and team building skills. There's a lack of trust. Trust is a virtual force to determine the success of a virtual team. The lack of trust greatly affects the productivity and performance. And then there's poor team engagement. Members build their own perceptions about the other team members, decisions taken, and the lack of effective communication. These are all very great reasons why virtual teams fail. There is more that goes into building a virtual team than maybe would be a face-to-face team. But just like in anything, face-to-face teams fail, and they fail due to the leadership or somebody not knowing what their role is. The difference I can definitely see, it is harder to build trust, just like when I had stated earlier that I work with my team in Kansas City. I talk to them on the phone. I don't see them on a daily basis. I don't have that face-to-face interaction. I don't get to read their body language. And that part of my position is that I am actually a quality analyst, so that I coach other team members on phone calls. So if they didn't do something per their CTQs, so we call them, they set up a coaching session. The offices are actually used to having those coaching sessions face to face, but now we set them up over the phone. My team members, they can't see me. They don't know who I am. They just know I'm a person on the phone telling them what I think they did incorrectly. It is very difficult to build trust when they can't see me. They can't read my facial expressions. So I really have to make sure that I am clear on the phone, that I try to engage them, that I talk, ask them about their day, just try to build that trust, because it is a little bit harder because they're not in front of me. We're not meeting face to face. So it does take a lot sometimes to get virtual teams to work, but all you need is the right people and the right leadership. But if you think about it, that goes into face-to-face teams also. How to manage a virtual team effectively. Clear and concise communications. Accountability to all tasks. Culturally diversity. Making sure they clearly define each team member's roles in the tasks or job. And consistent monitoring of performance among all employees and share with other management regularly. You have to think about it. I think the most one is just knowing different cultures, different countries. Everybody has their own language, their own culture, and things are different. And it's important, so when you are talking to somebody from India, that you respect their culture, that you know that things might be different there. I saw a video where they were talking to somebody in another country, and they saw that they had called, but they didn't leave voicemails. Well, they're not used to voicemails. They don't leave messages. And they also wanted some feedback. They wanted to know what they were doing. They wanted the person to take time and give them information. The person from the other country, they weren't really used to having to do that. Their people just came in and did their job. So it is a lot to get used to just different cultures and what to expect. And one person might do it one way someplace else. And in the same video I saw where the one person from one country thought this other country should just be online all the time, that they could just get online and answer their messages. There shouldn't be any issues with being on the internet. But from their point of view and their country, every time they were on the internet, it was costing them more and more money. They only had so many hours, and their just information systems weren't as great. They couldn't always get online, so they couldn't get back to the person. So it wasn't that they weren't doing their job, it's just that their information systems weren't as up to speed as somebody in, say, New York City. So it is very important just to know and to keep the lines of communication open so that you know what the reasonings are and who is doing what and where. And the monitoring of performance is huge. I mean, you have to know your manager might not be sitting next to you. They might not be in the office down the hall. They're not going to walk by and see if you walk to the water cooler to get a coffee 50 times. So there has to be monitoring, especially if somebody's working from home or in a different office or just working from anywhere. What are they doing? Are they getting the job done? So it's important. So that is why it's also very important, just for the employees also to be accountable for all of their tasks and their jobs and what are they doing. So, it's the same thing with managing a face-to-face team. It just has to be a little bit clearer, I think, sometimes on a virtual team so that it doesn't fail. But these are just all good ways to manage a virtual team. We're going to hear from Carla here in just a minute. She's going to talk to us a little bit about her job and her responsibilities and what she handles as far as virtually and how her job goes. So here is Carla. She's coming up next and she's going to talk to you for a little bit and we will talk from there. Thank you.
Okay, so how many of you remember in our office our memo? Those are things of the past. Now we're moving into the virtual world. We have been for the last 20 years. But a lot of companies are definitely looking at the technology that are making things so much simpler. And here's just a few of the different things I've been able to do with my opportunities that I've had to see. We're going to actually the opportunity to work on more than so I work at meetings, conference calls, as well as any time that I message. So we have these available to us every day, and then we use them. For instance, where we have boards on admission committee, which comes together from all the different sites to see how we recognize individual employees for something. We have communication council, which comes together and share best practices, and where we get that information out to the employees as well. And currently I'm on a project where we're improving current systems for reading, where we have to go in and test and retest. During these, we have 2 conference calls every week, and because of these conference calls, we go in using the web, and we see everybody else's screen, depending on who has control. So whenever we have an issue, concern with testing, and we're letting them know this is the error we're having, this is the problem we're having. They're not able to understand us, then we are able to take over control of the meeting. They hand us the controls, we go in, we walk them through exactly what we're doing, and what's not working, and then we're going to take it. Not only really is it go and fix the problem, but whenever we have reports or different information we need for testing and that email, or if I happen to get locked out of the system, I can just think to someone and ask them to reset me for the certain test region that I'm in. So this makes it a lot easier than the letter and mail or having everyone at the same location. So this gives a diverse background, and it's a great enhancement to an already great business. Because we have different sites all over, for instance, we work a lot with our editing office. For my department and my school, we have customer service and research department together, and managers are in Ohio. So if we have an issue or a problem, we're able to they can look it up and they can get information. Or we all have a shared drive, and we're able to go into shared drive, even if you're in India, as long as you have access to it. So having this virtual information available, somebody out, they're not able to remember to work, somebody else is still able to go and work. Or whenever we're doing testing, different time zones, they're able to go and work whenever we're not there, as well as we're able to go and work when they're not there. All the information we have available for everyone to use. So this is just one, some of the key things that I do every day. Working in a virtual world can make it a lot easier and even have meetings that I'll be at my desk, someone will be at their desk, and we'll be able to sit through a small training system being localized at our own site. So that makes it easier than everybody going into a conference room. Or that's another option. We can use a smartboard in the conference room, which, someone from another site can also get a feature. So there's many different opportunities to work in the virtual world, not just necessarily in a team, but in a training aspect. There's just many different things you can do there. So all in all, the virtual world is definitely broadened not having to send someone to different places to train people, or not having to send someone there to show them a new system, or whatever the reason may be. Just being able to reach out to somebody that's been competing across the internet, and you can just ask them a question over the internet, or send them an email with all the information. Can you locate this payment, and can you get it out to the specific account if you do find it? So there's just so many. And these are just a few of the different things you can do with the virtual world. And for GE, it's definitely something that we use on a daily basis, and something that I hope to learn much more about.
Hopefully you guys have enjoyed our presentation so far. And I just want to kind of wrap it up with a few things. Just tell you a little bit more about what I do, just because, granted, I don't work from home, so I am still in an office setting, so it's not all that virtual. Not like I can just pick up my laptop and I can go to the beach, or I can work from home from my pajamas. But I do still work in an office environment. However, as I stated before, my team is all in Kansas. So it's been different, challenging. And going back here to what Carla had just said about inter-office memos, I found that so interesting because I just didn't think they existed anymore. Because if you think about it, even if you work with a face-to-face team and you work in an office environment or most environments, you still do things that virtual teams do. You still email. You still have web chats. You still FaceTime somebody. You should still hold even phone conferences. With people that are maybe on a different floor than you. So even if you're not have teams that are in a different location, sometimes people are still working virtually in face-to-face teams. So when I heard Carla talk about office memos, I was very funny because last week I was just having dinner with one of my friends, a couple of them, and she had just said she had gotten a memo at her job about something. And I had to stop and say, "You got a memo?" That was just completely odd to me because I couldn't tell you the last time I've seen a paper memo. I never thought they still existed for some reason. Maybe because I haven't seen them in 13 plus years. So it was very weird, but what she does is she works in the mailroom and they don't have computers at their desk. So if they need information, it goes to their manager has to print it, and she sends out a memo. And each one of them gets a piece of paper on their desk every day about the memo. So I just thought that was odd, and it was weird that Carla brought it up, and I had just discussed this last week. One of my other friends said, well, sometimes not everybody has access to computers. Look at construction workers. They work outside. They're not sitting at a desk every day. But to me, I was like, with smartphones out there, everybody having access to technology 24/7, I was like, yeah, but they have smartphones. They can still get emails. Their boss can still call them. What's a memo? So I guess I just expect a little bit more because we do live in a technology age, and it's all around us. I mean, I can get my emails, it's delivered right to my phone. I can see what people are doing, I can call, I can text. So I guess I just assume, which I shouldn't, that everybody else has that same access as well. So during our research and our presentation, I have learned a lot myself, even with the advantages and disadvantages. As I stated before, I did my training over the phone and through WebEx. We did have one video conference, and we do set up conference calls so I can talk to more than just one person. but it was just completely different. And then listening to the advantages and the disadvantages, I know maybe we can make those adjustments where I'm at, because that is a disadvantage. And then I look at some of the advantages. For me, since I do still work in the Canton office, I'm still part of the commercial team. I basically have two managers. I have a manager there at the Canton office that handles my time cards, if I have any issues, just daily reporting into. But I also have my manager in Kansas, the quality manager. And one thing that she does that is great is she calls me. Every Monday we have a standard phone call. Even if it's only for 15 or 20 minutes, she checks in with me. I get time to just communicate with her, set aside just in case I have any questions. Because in Kansas, where the rest of her team is, she can walk down the aisle every day and she can say hello to all of them. And if they have questions or concerns, they can address them with her at that time. Whereas I don't have that convenience. I would have to physically pick up the phone, call her, find out when she's available. If she has a minute, it's not quite as convenient. So I think that that's great, and that is just one of the advantages that she does. She opens up those lines of communication and she makes sure it's clear. And I have that opportunity to talk. Another thing that we had discussed with the conference calls sometimes, and I don't know if we really discussed it, but that you have to consider is not everybody can have a voice. If you have 10 people on a conference call and nobody can see that other person, sometimes it's hard for a person to speak up or get a word in edgewise. So the leader or the person handling that needs to make sure they go around. They ask everybody in particular if they have any questions or concerns so that they can speak up and have a voice and it can be heard. So it was very enlightening to me to learn even more about body language, nonverbal communication, everything that we have been studying also, because part of my job too, as I stated during the presentation, is coaching. I have to set up coaching meetings, and I do that via the phone if I need to coach somebody in Kansas City. They can't see me, they can't read my body language, I can't read them. So it's hard to know what direction to go sometimes. I have to really listen to their tone and their voice, to make sure that, I build some sort of relationship with them as I'm talking to them. They can't look at me. They don't really know who I am. So, there's a lot of challenges also, but it's been great. I've enjoyed my new role, and I've enjoyed learning about the virtual work environment just due to the fact of my new role. So it's been very eye-opening. So I hope you guys have enjoyed our presentation, and that you've learned more about the virtual work environment, and it's helped you embrace technology or think about things that you do that you didn't really think that was in a virtual environment. So to conclude, I hope everybody has a great evening and that, like I said, you've enjoyed learning more about the virtual work environment. Thank you for listening.